We need to know how to add new data to our source data or to update our static or dynamic source data. The pivot table may be connected to data which is constantly changing, which we call dynamic data. There are manual methods to add or update data. We can click Analyze, Refresh to update data within the original defined source range. If you change a value or a formula within a source file, Refresh will update the info within the pivot table. So let's try that. So we'll copy this and we'll change the name. We will call it 101 Broadway Melodies. We'll go back to our pivot table and we will look for 101 Broadway Melodies. We don't see it. So why don't we see it? We don't see it because we need to refresh the data. So we click Analyze, Refresh, and there we have 101 Broadway Melodies. Awesome. So if you insert a column or a row, the normal refresh range will be automatically expanded. So our source file expanded to take up an additional row. So we were at 3727 and now we're at 3728. So that's because we actually did an insert within the normal range. Another manual way we can add or update data is to click Analyze and change data source. It updates data that was added outside of the defined source range. So you would use this choice if you add new rows or new columns outside of the designated range. Adding new rows dynamically is very common. So let's try doing that. Okay, well, we will add, while we're down at the bottom, we will add ZZZ row. And then at the top of the table, we will add ZZZ column. Now, we could go to Analyze, change data source, and change our range. Now it's asking us, do we want to change our range? But we can't do this every time we add a new row or a new column. There are better ways to do it. So let's talk about those better ways. How to automatically dealing with a growing data source. So there are two good ways of dealing automatically with growing data. Number one, leave out the row reference from the changed data source. As a result, Excel will include all rows within the described columns. Now this only works when we're adding new rows, so let's try that. We're going to remove the row reference and only leave the column reference. Okay, we've done that. And now let's see what we have. We click Refresh. And we have ZZZ row. So what it's done is it's added the additional row because it's only looking at the columns. It's everything included within the columns. Notice it's not actually adding the additional column. It's only adding the additional row. So the first one only works with rows. It does not work if we're adding new columns. Method number 2, which is better because it expands for new columns and new rows. You format the source as a table rather than a range. So what you would do is you would go to the database file. You would select the entire range. And then you would click Table. It's asking us for the range. This is correct. And now we have created table 1. Very good. So now we go back to our pivot table. We click Analyze, Change Data Source. And now, rather than leaving the range in here, we're going to remove that and type table 1. So now we're actually using the table rather than the range. And the table will expand. So if we look down here, we have our ZZZ row and we have our ZZZ column. So they're both included because, as I said, using a table, it will automatically expand. If you change your mind and you want to convert the data table back to a range, reselect the range or the table. So we go back here. We have the table selected. And then click Design or Table Tools and Convert to Range. And when I click on this, do you want to convert the table to a normal range? Yes. So it's actually converted it back to a normal range. Now, if you transform the data source range into a data source table and is not automatically expanding, then you can check to make sure you have the correct settings. So that would be File, Options, Proofing, Autocorrect, Auto Format as you type. So include new rows and columns in a table should be selected. So that's actually allowing the table to automatically expand, and that is selected. So that is the correct setting. So this is amazingly powerful. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'm overwhelmed to think about how much more powerful Excel has become as they've added new features. It is just so cool. All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.